Hello, Legend of the Samurai here with another Japanese high pin count dimple lock. This is the Sepa HDS. This is a 2-row lock with 7 pins on the left, 6 pins on the right for a total of 13. And they do use true zero lift and max lift pins, and they have a bunch of security pins scattered throughout. So I'll be using a relatively snug-fitting tensioner, although it's not essential in this lock, and just a normal flag. And there's quite a big amount of wiggle initially, because tolerances are not the greatest in this lock. Alright, here we go. So it's 1 on the left, 2 is good, 3, 4, 5 is good. Alright, that should be 6 and 7. 1, 2, 3 is good. 4, 5, 6, and let's check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're open. So for this lock, the drivers and springs are smaller than the keyway, so if I spin this full circle, they will fall into the keyway unless that is blocked, but the pin chambers are all offset, so it won't relock anyway. Lock that back up, and now we can take it apart. So this one, this was an RA cylinder that I cut about this much extra tubing off of because I didn't need it to be there, and it had 3 hardened pins that needed to be drilled out. I've made it such that if I loosen this screw, the core will slide out the back, and it comes with crimped in cover strips, which I have removed and replaced with sliding ones. Alright, onto the second strip. Oh, it comes out the other way. Where'd that go? There it went. They have a little hardened anti-drill pin at the very front. All right. So, in the back of the plug, they actually have this little spring detent that blocks the back of the keyway, but it still allows quite a bit of wiggle before it engages. And there are a couple of ball bearings. No, just the one. Alright, so here is our housing. It is very normal. And then here is our plug. We have a spot for the ball bearing, and then we have 7 chambers on one side, 6 on the other, and then a hole for that centering detent. No warding at all. And then it's just a single step of constriction at the bottom to keep the T-pin key pins from falling in. There's no overmilling or anything like that. So, plug is pretty normal. And then for the key pins, so we have these standard key pins in a number of chambers. And then we have a variety of spooled, or sort of the top half of a torpedo key pin. And so there's this style with a relatively long taper, which will give you counter rotation if you overset. And then shorter ones, which will also give you counter rotation. And then, under their zero lifts, they have a completely different style of spooled key pin, where it is a parallel spool. There's no taper here. So they will set over, and they will still give you counter rotation if you keep lifting on them. So oversetting can be a significant problem. And then as far as drivers, we have, grab one where the spring isn't still attached. So they're all cupped. And then we have some normal standard drivers. And they're a little rounded on the bottom to make the lock operate more smoothly, but that does make them a bit easier to pick. And all of the zero lift pins have standard drivers, but some of the other bitting heights have them too. And then we have these little mushrooms or spools that give you a decent degree of counter rotation. They have to be set past that. And those are distributed randomly. Some of them are over spooled key pins, some of them are over standard key pins. And so there's no straightforward way to tell exactly what feedback you're getting without sort of trial and error and figuring out what oversets and what doesn't. So there's our 2 rows of pins. So this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, looks like 7 spooled drivers, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spooled key pins. And so picking them is relatively straightforward if you don't overset anything. So it is relatively easy to overset into any of the spooled, especially on the zero lifts. If you tap those at all, they will pop up past that thin tip and overset, and then these ones, especially if you're pushing them past a spooled driver, you can very easily get them up into the spooling on the key pin, and they will stay overset, and then you can counter-rotate to drop them back, or you can just reset the lock, because there aren't that many pins. So once you figure out which ones are zero lift and which ones have the spooled drivers, it's pretty quick to go through. The zero lifts can cause a little bit of an issue, but you can get past them both below and above with a relatively thin flag, so not too much of an issue. One other thing to mention, there are 2 locks, the Sepa HDS, which is more common now, and there's an older one, the Sepa HDH. They're identical locks. They were jointly developed with another lock company, Hori. I believe HDH was the ones produced by Hori, and then when they stopped making them, they changed the name over to the HDS, which are all produced by Sepa now. So in terms of the actual internals, they should be identical because they were developed at the same time. And other than that, that is the Sepa HDS, picked and gutted. They're fun little locks. They're certainly very accessible in terms of high pin count. They're pretty fun to pick. They give nice feedback, and they don't require too much in the way of special modification to gut, especially if you get one of the other formats. So the RA cylinders are pinned in place, but some of the other ones, I believe the LD can just be disassembled with a screwdriver. All right. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.